If you are a believing Jehovah's Witness, I have a question for you. Now, I don't want you to immediately dismiss this because you think I am attacking you or bashing your belief system or the way that you see the world. But no, this is coming from a place of having spent 25 years as a Jehovah's Witness myself, and for the last 10 years, I have been really racking my brain to think about what the one question I wish someone would have asked me to critically examine whether or not I was following the one true God, or if perhaps I had been misled and even lied to by a group of men. What is that question? Are Jehovah's Witnesses uniquely protected by Jehovah God? And in this video, I want to talk about the claims that the Jehovah's Witness organization has made throughout their entire history about physical protection and spiritual protection, and get to the bottom of, are Jehovah's Witnesses uniquely protected by God? So let's talk about it. So the first thing that's important to establish is, how does someone actually get Jehovah's protection? What puts them in line for this sacred privilege of being uniquely protected by God, according to the Jehovah's Witness organization? Well, there are a lot of different things that you can do, and I'll try and cover as many as I can in rapid fire suggestion. So first off, you can receive Jehovah's protection if you are active in the preaching work.
Staying busy in Jehovah's service is a protection for us.
If you are gathering together at congregation meetings.
But weren't you frightened when you, in these meetings where you pulled down all the shades, that you might be discovered or arrested?
You might think so, but the opposite was true. I felt the most safe when we were all together. You could feel Jehovah's protection.
That's very touching.
If you reject the voice of anyone that's not a Jehovah's Witness, the world, and accept everything that comes from Jehovah, or by extension, the governing body.
But when we reject the voice of this world and listen to the voice of Jehovah and Jesus, we bring protection and blessings to ourselves and others.
If you start pioneering when you are a teenager.
To enter the pioneer ministry right out of high school, what a blessing and a protection it was to enter the regular pioneer work at age 17.
By developing a close and personal relationship according to the Jehovah's Witness doctrine.
And as we work to develop a close personal relationship with Him, then we can experience Jehovah's friendship and protection. We would never want to restrict Jehovah's protection by not looking to Him for guidance or relying on our own thinking.
By serving as a ministerial servant and a regular pioneer.
Brother Brown now enjoys the blessing of living under Jehovah's protection, serving as a ministerial servant and regular pioneer. You too can experience Jehovah's spiritual protection, as we'll learn throughout our program.
And if you're not quite sure if you haven't ticked any of these boxes, just make sure that you have a quality relationship with Jehovah.
As David saw, his relationship with Jehovah was a protection. In verse 32, he acknowledges that God had sent Abigail with the warning. We learn that Jehovah's spiritual protection for us is related to the quality of our relationship with Him.
Now that we know what NPCs to talk to so we can select the proper side quest to gain Jehovah's protection, a question kind of comes up here. Are they only talking about spiritual protection? But there was the lady that said that when they met together, they weren't nervous or scared because they felt God's protection. So that was referring to some type of physical protection. So there's two main players here. So let's first off look at what Watchtower has historically claimed with regard to Jehovah's Witnesses receiving God's physical protection in tangible ways, measurable ways in their lives. And after that, we will talk about how they have made the same claims for spiritual protection and some of my thoughts and questions regarding that. The Jehovah's Witnesses have a gray area, vague way of explaining what Jehovah's protection actually means in a practical sense. But the way that most Jehovah's Witnesses will look at it is that they are protected, maybe not on an individual level, but they're protected as a group. And here is one of their leaders, a governing body member, saying that very thing.
Satan is walking about like a roaring lion, seeking to devour someone. We may never know how often Jehovah shuts the mouth of that lion, how often Jehovah protects his people as a group from Satan. When we're working from door to door, for example, it's dangerous out there. And we probably have no idea how busy the angels are in our behalf.
As you can imagine, this point being reiterated to them over and over again gives them a sense of, well, as long as I'm doing Jehovah's will, I am going to be under his protection. And that is how a lot of current believing Jehovah's Witnesses think about it. When I was a Jehovah's Witness, that is how I thought about it. Now, there's a little corner of the internet that I like to go to where believing active Jehovah's Witnesses talk about whatever is going on within the organization. So I went there and just did a search under protection just to see what some of the sentiments were. And I found this particular person's post to be very enlightening to the subject. We generally think about a case, individual, or personal protection from God when it involves him or his purpose. We reflect back to Nazi persecution and brothers who were involved in the underground or hidden preaching or delivery of Bible literature. Miraculous events occurred. Other faithful people were not protected. Josiah was a king that restored pure worship to the land, but he died in battle and ended his 31-year reign. Some today survive hurricanes, but others perish in the same storm, even while seeking shelter in the Kingdom Hall. We can feel Jehovah's intervention and certainly give him thanks and praise for our survival of incidents, but it may be that it was just a fortunate outcome, as others have said. The son of one of my best friends was a teenage regular pioneer. He and his pioneer partner were out in service one Saturday morning, and the car they were riding in was struck by another vehicle. They were killed. So there is no guarantee that Jehovah will save you, even if you are engaged in doing his will. This really highlights the duplicitous nature of Jehovah's protection. What does that even mean? If they can tell you that you will receive Jehovah's protection if you're a pioneer, and here a young teenage kid whose pioneering dies in a car accident, what does Jehovah's protection actually mean in a practical sense? Sounds like it kind of means nothing. So that might be an individual thing. So that's why the Jehovah's Witness, and that's why David Splain specifically said he protects his people as a group. But how big does that group have to be? Does that group include a car group? Well, clearly from this example, it did not. What about a group of Jehovah's Witnesses gathering together at a meeting? A couple of years ago, we had a bomb going off at a meeting and people died. So it doesn't include something like that. What about something on a bigger scale? Say, a group of Jehovah's Witnesses in an entire country. Well, as this post even mentioned, that there were miraculous events surrounding Nazi Germany. But I think that this is an example that could be used against the idea of Jehovah's Witnesses receiving protection as a group. Let me quote a book that is really fascinating. If you like history, you should check it out. It's called IBM and the Holocaust. It's a really good read. Anyway, there is a section on there that specifically talk about how the Jehovah's Witnesses were targeted, and they were even part of the coding system that Thomas Watson and his Holrith system had come up with to track. And anyway, I won't go on a weird random tangent here, but let me just read this paragraph. Holrith codes afflicted not just Jews, but others at the bottom of the hierarchy of camp victims. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses were coded number 2. Known as Bible researchers, Jehovah's Witnesses were singled out for their abstinent refusal to register for the German draft and their Christian rejection of anti-Semitism. They were rewarded with a greater level of maltreatment than almost any prisoner other than a Jew coded 8. To relieve their daily agony of beatings and camp killings, Jehovah's Witnesses need only to sign a declaration denouncing their church and submit to the military draft. This was they steadfastly declined to do. For their courage and conscience, Jehovah's Witnesses were tortured and slaughtered. Now, these are just the facts. Jehovah's Witnesses will often think about what happened in Nazi Germany as a miraculous testimony to how Jehovah protects his people. But they were tortured. They were slaughtered. They had worse treatment than almost any other group in that time. How can it be said that this is an example of Jehovah's protection as a group of people in an entire country when hundreds of them were being slaughtered? Now, another claim that Jehovah's Witnesses will often make when it comes to physical protection is that during natural disasters, that they will see Jehovah's hand helping them. His strong arm of protection was surrounding them. And they will also claim that the organization protects them because obedience to the organization will lead to your physical protection. It will help you with whatever that instructions that they are giving you. So let's look at the specifics of what Watchtower claims and analyze them a little bit more critically.
Well, here in California, we're used to fires. But when I got the call to evacuate that morning, I never knew by that evening the whole town of Paradise would be gone. Just before the fire, we had the needs of the congregation where they instructed us of what to do in the case of a disaster. I had the truck full of gas, I had my go bag ready, and I had a map of where I was going. I was ready. The brothers also in their instructions said to obey the traffic instructors. The instructor told us to turn right, and I didn't want to turn right, but they said obey them, so I turned right, though I thought it'd be really bad. The smoke got darker and darker. And finally it got black. You couldn't see anything. I realized that I was going to die. I asked Jehovah if he saw enough good in me, if he would just resurrect me, that I'd love to be in his new world and see my husband again and my children. And I thanked him so much for the life that I had. And I felt such a peace that I never felt before. And then I just knew it was Jehovah getting me out. The obedience, just doing what we were told, it came from Jehovah, and it was so simple that gave him something to bless, and it may have saved my life.
So this woman, through her personal experience, felt that this was God, this was Jehovah that was protecting her. And it wasn't just her saying it and, people pointing and laughing at her saying, oh, well, she's a little bit of a kooky Jehovah's Witness. We don't actually teach that Jehovah provides protection in physical ways and practical ways. No, that's not what's happening. This was a broadcast out to every single Jehovah's Witness around the world. This is part of their canon, their doctrine. Now, I want to look at another example that is publicly broadcast out to every single Jehovah's Witness of another time during a natural disaster where people were following the instructions of the organization and how that panned out for them.
Papa told us, wake up, wake up! The rain is about to get stronger.
Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew, and the roof finally blew off. We tried to hold on, but we were being lifted from the ground, so we let go. Otherwise, we would have been blown away.
We removed everything that was inside the refrigerator. And then we put the literature inside and our Papa arranged it.
As the storm approached, many families evacuated their homes to more solid structures. 60 persons sought shelter at the Kingdom Hall. A 5-meter-high storm surge crashed into the building, collapsing the walls. Many were swept away. 22 people died.
Now I'm going to need you to take a deep breath and try and really absorb what you just watched. Jehovah's Witnesses are so confident because of what they're being told by the organization. They are so sure of Jehovah's protection during a hurricane. The roof is coming off of their house, and what do they think to do? What is going to be the practical step that they're going to do? Take their food out of the refrigerator so they can preserve their Watchtower publications. That is how deep the indoctrination of the idea that Jehovah is going to protect us. Well, I mean, would he protect us if we let the Watchtower and Awake magazine and our Bible get some water on it? Oh, well, you know what? We need to prove it to him. We need to put our spiritual food in our physical refrigerator and let our physical food potentially go to waste. That is how confident the Jehovah's Witnesses are when it comes to the idea of physical protection. So on one hand, we have people that are willing to sacrifice physical food for Watchtower magazines. Complete delusion. And on the other hand, we have an even worse delusion, because there were this group of 60 people that went and sought shelter inside of the Kingdom Hall. And unfortunately, more than 20 of them died. But why were they there? Well, let me play you a clip from earlier in the video so we can understand exactly how messed up it is for Watchtower to ever tell people that they will receive Jehovah's protection if they obey the instructions of the governing body or the organization.
When Super Typhoon Haiyan made landfall on November 8, 2013, many of these witnesses were in the direct path of the storm.
Disaster Relief Desk.
Before the storm hit, the Philippines branch office began coordinating the evacuation and relief efforts.
We are preparing for the typhoon because the news are said that we need to prepare. So I text everybody, every elder in congregation, I text that they need to evacuate to the safer place.
We knew it was going to do tremendous damage.
So on an organizational level, they were coordinating evacuations. Now, who's to say that these 20 people would have survived otherwise? But clearly, if you have 60 people in this building and a third of them die as a result of it being washed away, something went terribly wrong. I'm going to just hazard a guess in my head that 1/3 of all the people in that area didn't pass away. So were those people killed as a direct result of seeking God's protection? Jehovah's Witnesses have this sense that they will be protected to the point where they're willing to throw out their physical food as the roof is getting blown off. That is how confident they are. But what does that confidence get them? For these people, that confidence lost them their life. So again, I ask you in earnest, when we are looking at examples that Watchtower uses of Jehovah giving his people special protection, and they say it all the time, is that based in any type of reality? Or is that a fictitious mind virus that is only sticking because it's repeated over and over again? Now, if you are a believing Jehovah's Witness, no doubt you are telling yourself something right now. And that is, well, we don't think that Jehovah will protect everybody, and we know that people ultimately are protected because God has them in their memory and they'll be resurrected in the paradise. Okay, but remember, the organization is the one that is promoting this idea that in the real world right now, you will have some level of protection. So that's just one thing. But the other thing that you might be asking or telling yourself right now is, well, the real thing that we get, the real way in which we are protected is spiritually. God isn't going to work miracles for everyone, but we have the truth. We are spiritually protected by any of the false teachings of Satan's system. If you are a Jehovah's Witness, you have to really understand and accept what the Watchtower has said about the spiritual paradise, their monopoly on truth. The Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe that other Christian or any other religious organization can have any semblance of truth to them. It's not as if you're like, well, they're mostly good people, but they're just missing a few little doctrinal things in the end, but it's fine. They have a good heart and Jehovah will take care of them at Armageddon. No. The Jehovah's Witnesses fully believe that every other religion that's not theirs is being led and controlled by Satan the devil. God, Jehovah's Witness, truth, and life is on one side of the wall, and on the other side of the wall is Satan, the world, lies, and death. It's a matter of life and death, black and white, ones and zeros. There is no gray area in between. And they go so far to remind you that this is the truth, singular, that it is pounded into the brains of every single Jehovah's Witness child. Fundamental question needs to be asked. Is this claim of being the truth supported by any type of evidence, or does it get kind of problematic when you step back and look at what the truth, if there were such a thing, would actually look like? Now, I've selected this very specific music video, one, because if you are above the age of 7, you know every single word to this song. Every Jehovah's Witness, I'm pretty confident, will know every single word to that song. As soon as I heard it, I haven't heard it in probably 15 years, boom, every single word came immediately back into my mind. But I chose this because in this music video that, is obviously targeted at children, they are showing older Watchtower publications. They're showing the little sandwich boards and preaching with the big giant tracts that were, the size of the old fax paper. And it's going to lead right into my next point of, let's look at the history of the Jehovah's Witness doctrine and see if that lines up with a claim that they have of being the truth. The history of the Jehovah's Witness doctrine is one of the schizophrenic evolution, where it is progressing and then regressing, it's flipping, it's flopping, it's jumping, it's skipping. And it doesn't really have, in my opinion, the hallmarks of truth, because a truth can be a lie, and then that lie later on could be the truth as well. Now, I'm not going to go and do an elaborate breakdown of all of these various changes that they've made. I've made a lot of videos talking about some of those very specific ones, so you can check for those on other videos in the channel. But let me just give you a rough breakdown of some of the major changes that they've made to the doctrine. And you have to remember that these cannot be called refinements, but they are actually reversals and sometimes re-reversals. 1914. It is the security code to 90% of all Jehovah's Witnesses smartphones, or the security code to their kingdom halls. 1914. It is such a pivotal date to Jehovah's Witnesses, and they look at that as being one of the great things that they were correct on when it comes to world history, that they predicted something significant would happen. But what they actually predicted was everyone that was part of the Watchtower organization and following Charles Taze Russell was going to be raptured to heaven. And when that didn't happen, they had to rebrand what the 1914 thing meant. Again, it's not a refinement, but it is a complete reversal, a complete change in the definition of what was expected to happen at 1914. And then later on, they predicted that everyone would be raptured to heaven again in 1918. And that also didn't happen. Then they did the same thing again in 1920s. And then that didn't happen. And then it would come sometime in the 20th century, and then that didn't happen. And then they also had said that it would happen within a specific generation. Okay, they got the specific date wrong, but they made it a little bit more broad. Well, then that generation of people died. And then they said, well, it's actually not that generation at all. It's actually wicked people. And then a little bit more time passed by and they said, no, it's actually not wicked people. It is actually that first generation that we talked about, but another generation of people that overlap with that generation. These are not minor refinements. These are absolute reversals. This is when you make a prediction and it's wrong. It's proven wrong. Everyone can see it's wrong. And you just have to start making things up. The rules on disfellowshipping and shunning excommunication are very fascinating as well. In the inconabula of the organization, their early stages, they would decry the Catholic Church for their disgusting, deceitful, manipulative practice of shunning and excommunication. They called it a tool for the devil, a weapon. They would refer to shunning as a weapon. Then a few years later, what happened? They learned the value of that weapon and they started doing it themselves. So, shunning, bad, satanic. Shunning, good. Shunning, godly. And now where are we at? Well, they're slowly starting to say, well, shunning, it's not all that great. It's not all that super duper. And they're starting to slowly walk back some of the policies regarding shunning. You cannot call this an adjustment. These are a 180-degree turn, where one thing is a wonderful gift from God, and the next day it is an evil manipulation tactic by Satan. And if you have been a Jehovah's Witness for a very long time, you are very well aware that the organization has fundamentally changed. You have seen with your own eyes, if you've been in this organization for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you have seen how fundamentally the organization is not the same. The means of communicating through the governing body, before they were looked at as these wise, scholarly men, and then they come on JW Broadcasting with these ridiculous, over-the-top facial expressions, and they're begging you for money. Almost like it was a tele-evangelist. And I was a Jehovah's Witness then, and I felt that feeling. It made me uncomfortable. I remember being able to pick up a Watchtower and learn a new word every single time I picked up a Watchtower. They were articles in there that would make you think. You'd have to pick up your Bible and really study and think about something. And then slowly over time, all of that just went away. You would pick up a Watchtower and it seemed like they were saying the same thing that they said 3 months ago. Something was lost there. If you are a Jehovah's Witness, I know for a fact you know what I'm talking about. Now, with all of the changes, not only to the culture and the feeling and the doctrine of the organization, I have a very important question that you have to ask yourself. If this organization is the truth, as they claim, if they are promoting the only true way to believe in God, then that means that someone that was a Jehovah's Witness, your father or grandfather, your grandmother, they died believing a lie. How were they spiritually protected if they lived their entire life believing in a doctrine that would ultimately change? If the ruling people, the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses, decide to, hey, this teaching that someone went to their grave, that maybe was tortured, went to prison defending, we don't really take that too seriously anymore. That's not real. We don't really know. That means by definition, that person died believing in a lie. So, are Jehovah's Witnesses living in a spiritual paradise? Are they being spiritually protected if their members can finish their time here on earth and it's left to God believing in a lie? So we have looked at the claims that the Jehovah's Witnesses make about God giving them this vague physical protection, and then we've looked at the claims they make very rigorously about spiritual protection. But there's a third area where these two ideas kind of mesh. There's an intersection of them, and that has to do with when a doctrine, I don't know why I just made that weird noise, when a doctrine can affect someone's physical life. What am I talking about? Well, to give one example, let's look at the medical advice they have given when it comes to getting a organ transplant. At one point in time, Jehovah's Witnesses had no problem going to a doctor and need a new liver. Hey, you better get a new liver there, Buster. Things aren't looking very good for you. Totally fine. And then the leadership made a decision. They read the Bible, they prayed, they got God's Holy Spirit and said, no more organ transplants. It's cannibalism, it's disgusting, it's filthy, it's foul, and it is not for Christians. We will no longer be getting organ transplants. And that was a rule. That was part of their spiritual doctrine. And what effect did it have in people's physical lives? People died. People died obeying this rule that the leadership of the Watchtower had come up with. Well, what happened? There was some backlash, people asking questions about it. Was this really rooted in the Bible? And eventually, not too many years later, they changed the doctrine back and said, no, actually, never mind. It's okay if your conscience allows you to get an organ transplant. But what about those people that died? Were they receiving any type of protection? They were following the organization, they were following the leadership that is claiming to protect them spiritually. And because of that, it had the effect in their physical life where they lost it. That was it. Dunzo. Were those people being protected spiritually or physically? What does God's spiritual protection mean at this point? if at every single turn when we examine any type of claim and roll back, well, it's not really talking about this, it's talking about this. No, well, that's not really talking about this, it's walking. If it just continues to fail, the question just has to be asked, what does it actually mean when they claim that you will, guaranteed, be protected if you are one of Jehovah's Witnesses? Now, if you've made it this far in the video, I congratulate you for your intellectual honesty and your curiosity and your having an open mind. Now, I know what it would feel like because there's a lot of things going on in the old noodle, because you're going to be immediately thinking, this guy, this little goofball on the internet, he is spreading lies, he is spreading propaganda, because he's an evil apostate. He's not looking for the truth. He's just trying to make vague generalizations and random assertions. He's using name calling to try and dismantle my faith. He's playing on my emotions with the different types of music that he's chosen to use throughout this whole thing. But I just want to say that there is a difference, a big difference, between education and propaganda. Education shows you how to think. Propaganda tells you what to think. Good educators present all sides of an issue and encourage discussion. Propagandists relentlessly force you to hear their view and discourage discussion. Often, their real motives are not apparent. They sift the facts, exploiting the useful ones and concealing the others. They also distort and twist facts, specializing in lies and half-truths. Your emotions, not your logical thinking abilities, are the target.
And then I just knew it was Jehovah getting me out. The obedience, just doing what we were told, it came from Jehovah, and it was so simple that gave him something to bless, and it may have saved my life.
And, you might be wondering, okay, well, these propagandists are out there. What could I do possibly to protect myself? Well, my recommendation would be to put the information to the test. Beloved ones, said John, a first century Christian teacher, do not believe every inspired expression, but test the inspired expressions. Some people today are like sponges. They soak up whatever they come across. It is all too easy to absorb whatever is around us. But it is far better for each individual personally. It is far better for each individual personally to choose what he will feed his mind. It is said that we are what we eat, and this can apply to food for both the body and mind. No matter what you are reading or watching or listening to, test to see whether it has propagandistic overtones or it is truthful. Moreover, if we want to be fair-minded, we must be willing to subject our own opinion to continual testing as we take in new information. We must realize that they are, after all, opinions. Their trustworthiness depends on the validity of our facts, on the quality of our reasoning, and on the standards or values that we choose to apply. Ask questions. As we have seen, there are many today who would like to delude us with persuasive arguments. Therefore, when we are presented with persuasive arguments, we should ask questions. First, examine whether there is bias. What is the motive of the message? If the message is rife with name-calling and loaded language, why is that? Loaded language aside, what are the merits of the message itself? Also, if possible, try to check the track record of those speaking. Are they known to speak the truth? If authorities are used, who or what are they? Why should you regard this person or organization or publication as having expert knowledge or trustworthy information on the subject in question? If you sense some appeal to emotions, ask yourself, when viewed dispassionately, what are the merits of the message? Please ask questions. Please test anything that I have said for its accuracy, for its clarity. I might make some mistakes here and there. I'm not an infallible human being, but in general, for the most part, the 99%, is this information that I have provided coming directly from the Watchtower organization? Now, my final thoughts on this are just the very simple question. What would it look like if God was protecting the Jehovah's Witness organization? I suspect that even if you took miraculous intervention out of the equation, I think you would still see the safest, most unified, one of the least harmed groups on planet Earth. I feel like historically, we would see direction that was consistent from the organization, where they had a near flawless track record of giving good, quality advice to their people that saved lives and protected them. From the spiritual perspective, I feel like the truth, the organization, the truth that they are giving to their members should have been consistent throughout the ages, because with that lack of consistency, you have a problem of someone dying, believing in a lie. And fundamentally, I don't know how you could logic your way out of that. How can you say that they died believing the truth when it wasn't true? It would just be such a butchering of language, of thought, of reason. It makes no sense. So between the preventable loss of life that the organization has seen because of their failed prophecies and their ever-evolving doctrine, I think I can comfortably say that no, the Jehovah's Witnesses are not uniquely protected by God. And I wish someone would have asked me this question when I was a Jehovah's Witness, because if they did, and I examined all of this information, it would be pretty clear to me that I was following a group of men, and I wasn't following the almighty and true God. So test everything that I've said. If I've gotten something wrong, comment down below and let me know what that is. Let's have a conversation. Let us leave this open to discussion, so that way you can look at as many different opinions. As that Awake article said, you can't just trust your one opinion. You can't just trust one source. You have to open it up for discussion and get a more rounded view of any given situation. With all of that being said, stay safe, be kind, and don't forget to spend more time loving the things you love than hating the things you hate. Oh, and you better have a good ass day.